Welcome to In Colour, hosted by myself, Hamish Hallett, where I interview individuals from a variety of professions and to get to know them on a personal level. For this episode, I've been joined by Jaya Pathak, who is a co-executive director and deputy editor at Yet Again. She's also regional ambassador at the Holocaust Educational Trust. She's also part of the executive for Labour Campaign for International Development, part of Stop Uyghur Genocide, and a program assistant for Arise. But we really want to understand Jaya on the personal level, away from these amazing roles. So let's bring on Jaya on In Colour. So thank you so much, Jaya, for being on In Colour. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really, really good. No, thank you so much for coming on to In Colour, just to get to know you a bit more on the personal level. So as I've said, you've done so many amazing roles and so many different things. What I really want to understand then is, like, what are your achievements so far that you're like most proud of so far, would you say?
Oh, that's so hard. I think I have so many different aspects of my life where I've achieved different things. And so for those reasons, they're great in those respective areas. So I think, for me, university is a big achievement because I chose my course last minute. I changed course. I chose my university last minute. So I had a complete redirection in terms of the actual course I wanted to do. So to be able to have done well so far and to see myself having a future in this career path in relation to my degree as well is really cool. And I think that's a massive achievement. And then I think, all of the work that I've obviously done with my activism and with Yet Again, Holocaust Educational Trust, all of that is a huge achievement as well, because for me, I find it hard to balance things. And so I've had to learn to balance. And so having been able to successfully do that is an achievement in itself. And I think, we all achieve amazing things together with our teams. And that's, more than I could ask for. So I think all of those complement each other quite well.
That's really cool. So you spoke about balancing and stuff like that. Why would you say you felt like it was a bit of a challenge to balance? And why was it, as now you're saying it's an achievement, why would you say that's an achievement in terms of balancing work? Would you say it was, for you personally, is it quite difficult to balance loads of commitments, or in that sense?
So I'm a perfectionist. So it's, and being a perfectionist works sometimes, right? But yeah, I still understand the pain, how it feels. Sometimes it's so difficult to feel like I'm doing my best in every single thing that I do because I'm a perfectionist. So if there's one thing that doesn't go right, I tend to feel it for a little bit. Sometimes I mope. It's really dramatic, but it's because I'm so used to wanting to feel like everything has to be perfect. And the issue is when you're doing so much, you have to balance and you have to prioritize. And so naturally, there are going to be things that happen that don't happen according to plan. And so I have to be okay with that. And that's been a bit of a challenge because my personality type is I'm super high energy, I'm super on the go. And so having to step back and reflect and be like, okay, why did this not go well? Can feel difficult. And I think that's where balancing my sort of the work that I do and also having free time is really important because it allows for me to have a healthy perspective on the work that I do as well. And it can get difficult because I also find it hard to say no. So I say, if I get asked to do something and I will always want to show up and do my best. And I find it hard to sometimes, being completely candid, to actually say, I need some time away or I need some time to just relax or let things settle a little bit. And that's where the balance becomes hard. But it's something I've been working on, and I'm really lucky I have a great support system and people who I look up to who, tell me, right, Jaya, like you need to say no to this, or you need to take your time with this and be okay doing that. Because without balance, if I don't show up and be the best version of myself, I'm no use to anything that I do, right? So I have to be able to find a way to feel like I'm doing my best without putting pressure on myself.
That sounds really great. And you talk about your support system. Who would you say is really part of your support system that you really look up to? And in terms of who's the person that let's say you're struggling, for example, you're managing so many different commitments. Who is that one person that you kind of look up to say, this is the person I really want to go to? Who's that kind of person?
So I'm really lucky. I'm one of 4 children, and I've got a really big family. So I have, I'm the youngest. So my older siblings are incredible. My parents, I've always got someone to go to at home. My boyfriend is, he's been here since right at the beginning. So, he sort of helped me along the way with uni and with school and with all of these things that I do. And, they're fantastic because they provide perspective. I also have amazing friends, and these are people that I work with as well. So, everyone can relate to the feeling of being overwhelmed or being overworked. And so we can check in on each other. And I tend to sort of go to different people for different things. I wouldn't say there's one person, perhaps my boyfriend or my family, because I'm with them all the time. But I think it literally, we've all developed such a good support network that I could go to any one of those people and feel like, I need help on something, or this is how I'm feeling. And I also think I look up a lot to, family members and, grandparents and people who are no longer here, but I look up to them and I look up to their experiences and the advice they've given me. And I always think about that when I'm having difficult times or times in which I'm struggling a little bit as well.
That sounds, wow. It must be very, what's the word? Grateful for having that kind of support system, then, I'm guessing, because it sounds incredible. The fact you have a boyfriend, you have so many people who clearly understand, like, sometimes going through a disappointment, and you having that sort of support system there, I think is amazing, because I think a lot of people sometimes don't have that support system. Because I think you spoke about, because we've already spoken about, the achievements and things like, being able to like decide having a university course that kind of coincides with your kind of activism. What kind of disappointments have you had so far? In that sense?
I've had, I think I've had a lot. I think everyone it's such a normal experience. But I think how I used to look at them as disappointments, now I would look at them as experiences, because I've shifted my perspective a little bit. But I've been through it all. Like I'm a high achiever academically. But I have also failed exams. I had to resit some of my A-levels, some of my A-level examinations. And although it all ended up really well and I got the grades I needed, I had to go through that experience at a young age, which for someone who's a perfectionist as well is quite difficult. I've had, moments where I feel like I could have written a better article, or I could have done better in a panel event or things like that, because I feel like again, it's about the pressure I put on myself, but also I'm very aware that, sometimes life just happens and you can't always plan and you can't always make sure everything's perfect. So, all of those things sort of can feel like disappointments. And I think that I think academically, I've definitely felt it more. And I think that's because there have been more experiences for me to fail as such, the definition of the word failure, which I don't, give any meaning to the word failure, but I think academically you have a lot more opportunity to fail, right? Because you pass a test, you fail, and all of those experiences. And so I'm a high academic achiever, and no one is exempt from not doing well in an exam, but I'm very open in that I have had experiences where I haven't. And so I've had to overcome that. And that knocked my confidence quite a lot when I was 17, 18 years old, because I wasn't used to feeling like I didn't know what I was doing. And so I think it all sort of coincides, but fortunately for me, I've learned how I study best. I've learned how I perform best in exams. I put less pressure on myself academically. So all of those things that I once regarded as disappointments, I now regard as learning experiences, which have only just made things so much better. And I now shift my perspective a lot.
That's really good, especially the whole shifting of perspective, because I find a lot of people kind of sometimes look at disappointment and just view it as that, and don't view it as actually experience in terms of growing. So like, what I'm really interested in is that what particular experience shifted your mindset? Was it a certain, like an exam? Was it a certain disappointment during your activism? What certain experience actually made you switch from looking at disappointment as something really bad, but actually using it as an experience? So what was that particular experience of that?
I think the reason it's more academic focused and activism focused is because I feel in activism, you are, there is no right or wrong, if that makes sense. You strategize, then you re-strategize, then you plan a campaign and it doesn't go that well sometimes. And then you think, okay, let me shift direction. You have a little bit more flexibility with activism. Academically, I remember when I failed one of my A-level exams. So I went through something quite difficult during my A-levels, and I failed one of my A-level exams. And I remember, I thought at that time I was defined by the exams I was doing, and I was defined by the course I did at uni. I was defined by all of these things, but really I'm not defined by any one issue. None of us are, right? So I remember having a conversation with my sisters and my family, and they basically said to me, at the end of the day, you're going to go through life, you're going to have things that you expect, things that you don't expect, but how you define yourself is really important. And you've got to see that everything is actually doesn't have meaning. We put meaning on things as human beings. So something could happen to me and I could say that's really good and somebody else could say that's really bad. It's because it's about perspective. And then I remember my sister said this to me and I was like, whoa, that's so true. We give meaning to everything in our lives. So I'm just going to give this a meaning, that this is actually a really good thing. And I'm going to learn, not to put so much pressure on myself. I'm going to learn when to say no, when to say I need help with something, what exam techniques are best for me. And as soon as I did that, I smashed my exam afterwards, but it wasn't until I did all of those things that I realized. So for me, I think it was the realization that we put meaning on events and experiences and people, and our meaning that we put on it shifts our perspective. So I will shift the meaning I give things in order to feel like I can uplift myself again. And that's something that I've done ever since.
Wow. That's really, really powerful. And you even talk about how you define yourself. How do you define yourself? I know that sounds really cringy the way I said it, but it's like, how do you define it? I know it sounds really like, how you define it?
I honestly think there's like a really three-dimensional way to look at it, which is, I'm a creative person, I'm a passionate person, I'm really interested in, topics and areas like human rights, and I'm, a strong believer in the type of values and virtues one should have in order to be a good person. I love science. I study pharmacy at uni, so I'm a big believer in clinical science, but I'm also super spiritual. So I guess from a 3D way, I could say those things. But the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing that actually I don't know how to define myself anymore, and I think that's not a bad thing. I think that at the end of the day, I'm a fluid person when it comes to my personality. Some days I'm a lot quieter, some days I'm a lot louder. Sometimes I really care about certain issues, and other days I feel like my interest changes a little bit and I'm passionate about certain other things. And so I think one thing that I would say is I am, I'm somebody who's quite open-minded, and I'm aware that as I get older, I might have new experiences that I enjoy more, and that I decide, that's how I define myself. But I think also defining myself by saying that I am sort of who I want to be. I used to put a lot of pressure on how other people saw me, and that comes from how my family saw me, how my friends see me, how my teachers saw me at school. But actually, I realized that how I see myself is important, and then how everyone else sees me is a reflection of that. So I think that's sort of where I am at the moment. And I guess you could say, you could talk about the personality traits, the things I'm interested in, and say that defines me. And all I know is that I just sort of want to just do my best and try and make, as cringe as it sounds, make the world a better place, and however I feel I can. And that's sort of the only way I kind of see myself at the moment. But I think self-definition changes so much, and I'm amazed when people can say this is who I am, because I'm like, I'm always learning. I'm just like, one day I'm like, whoa, is this me? This is so cool. And I think there are things that are, more me, and people associate with me, and I associate with myself as well. But I'm just aware that I could never put into words, and I don't think any of us could put into words what we are, because it's so varied and it's so broad.
This is why we're doing color. It's to actually showcase, well, actually you're very nuanced. I can't say to you, because this is the thing, right? I thought before speaking to you, I thought, oh, Jay is just like an activist. But actually you're way more than that from speaking to you. Like you're creative, you do pharmacy, you do so many different things, which is why the show exists, is to showcase, to go beyond the avatars, actually showcase, actually, no, these people are so nuanced. You can't just put, I agree with you in terms of the whole labels as well. Like you can't just say this person's a conservative, this person's an activist, this person's a liberal, and that's, I think, this is why this show kind of exists, is to showcase, well, people are so nuanced. And what I really want to touch on from you then is, because you've spoken, because you have so many variety of different things in terms of what slightly defines you, and of course you can't define yourself right now, but what I'm really interested in to understand is what influenced you then to become involved within, let's say, human rights, What influenced you to do pharmacy? Like what kind of influenced you to do those different things within your sort of in your own path in that sense?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things. I think, my family, so my parents we're British Indian. My parents left East Africa and moved here with my grandparents when Idi Amin came into power in East Africa and expelled African Asians. And so, from a young age, I became very aware of racial prejudice, racial discrimination, and how that feels, because I knew of my parents' experience. I knew of my grandparents' experience during the partition, during the colonialization when they lived in India. And so I think all of those things made me aware of how it feels to be a minority and what I could do to help others. And so that, I became very interested in human rights from a young age. I became super interested in politics because, whether we like politics or not, it affects our lives. And I obviously I'm a member of the Labour Party now. I rejoined, but I work with cross-party. I mean, some of my closest friends, one of my closest friends, he's a Conservative. He is somebody that 5 years ago, would I have seen myself being close friends with him? Absolutely, probably not, because I didn't know. I went to a pretty left-wing school. I didn't know many people who were this into politics, but me and him are such close friends, and I'm so grateful for my relationship with him and all the other people that I know that aren't politically aligned with me, because I learned so much from them. And so I became super interested in the politics of it. And then my dad is very aware of sort of current affairs, and he used to read, he always reads newspapers. And so from a young age, I remember being like 2 years old, pretending to read a newspaper. I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought I was reading a newspaper. And so I was just always around that area. And then science-wise, I'm a problem solver, and I've got a very critical thinking mind. So I love solving, like maths, I absolutely love maths. I love science. I love getting presented with a problem and figuring out how I can solve it. And I think that's why I'm also an activist, because a lot of the time you're thinking these problems exist. How can I find a solution to it?
Yeah, that's true,
and I think that overlaps. But I'm definitely shaped by, my family's experiences, the people that I know, my friends. I grew up in West London, super diverse, people who have all different experiences from life, grew up in Hounslow as well. And then, just having a really strong sense of, this is what's right, this is what's wrong morally. We need to do better. We need to support those who can't, who are limited to what they can do. We have to speak up for minorities. We have to speak up for those who are persecuted. And then as I've gotten older, I've surrounded myself with more people like that. So, I'm so blessed. I work with the best people who are absolutely phenomenal in what they do. And I've gotten to know them. I've got to become friends with them. And so I've learned so much from them. And that just almost compounds how I already feel about these things. And I just think that at the end of the day, we have to find the solutions ourselves. And, people say you've got to be the change, and that's very true. You have to. You have to embody it, and you have to start somewhere. And so that's sort of where my outlook came from.
Interesting. That's such a, it's like a really nice arc from like you describing it, from like your parents, your friends, the people that I think I've seen from Yet Again. Those people are amazing. I know you work with so many different types of people who I know quite personally. And you also spoke a lot about the lessons you learned from your friends. What particular lessons did you learn that you've actually used in your own life? Have you taken?
So I think there's been a couple standout ones. I think the first is that it's good to listen to people that you don't agree with. And I think that the reason I say that is
common sense, we do that as well. Sorry to interrupt. Like common sense, we are both like
exactly,
that. Yeah.
Exactly. I think, I've learned a lot about that from so many people, and I think for me, it's because when I grew up, I was always listening to people who had different perspective. But I think especially when it comes to politics, it's very easy to fall into a trap of, I'm right because this is my politics and you're wrong because that's your politics and we can never agree on anything. But that's just simply not true. And it's not how a functioning society should work. And so, Joe, who's one of our co-execs, again, he's Conservative, him and one of my closest friends, we both work with so many people from so many different political perspectives. And what I love is that Joe always says, I listen, and he listens to people, and he tries to understand why they say what they say, why they believe what they believe. And I've picked that, I had been like that for a few years, but working with Joe has made me more aware of, the benefits of doing that. And I think that's been phenomenal. And we both know Jack from Demographica.
Yeah,
I love what Demographica do, because they do that. They bring people who are from so many different positions to have conversation. And that's one thing I really love about Jack and love about Demographica, is that you give space for people to talk about the things that you agree on, but that you disagree on. There are so many campaigners we work with who are cross-party campaigners who are brilliant. And what I love is that everyone works together to achieve a common goal, and we see beyond the politics of a situation, which is so important. And so I think that's definitely the first thing I've learned. And then the second would be that it's good to say, I don't know something. And I think that sometimes we struggle as people trying to admit when we don't know what something's about, or we don't have the knowledge on it. And I don't think we say enough that we don't know. We often overcompensate as human beings, or we say, well, I'm not too sure about that, but I do know this. And actually, it's okay to say we don't know. And that's something I've learned as well. It's good to admit when you don't know something, because there's always opportunity to learn. And we are all, none of us are experts in what we're doing. We're here to learn from each other. So I think that's also been a really good lesson. And then I would also say, making sure you look after yourself, and you sort of, what was I saying, take care of your own garden before you start going to water others. I think that's really important, because like I said, I will do for everybody, and I love that, and I will always be that way. But I have at points not looked after myself, and I've neglected myself, and I've had different points in my life where I've done that. And like I said before, if I can't even look after myself, how can I expect to be of any benefit to any of the other work that I do? So I've learned from people who are, strong enough to say, I need a moment, or I need a couple of days, or, let me sort myself out, and then I will do what I can. And that's been really inspiring to me, because I didn't know how to do that for a long time. I found it very difficult to take a step back. So bringing balance into my life, I've learned a lot from my friends as well.
That's wow. I wish I had those kinds of friends in my life. I mean, don't worry. I have friends like that. Don't worry. Yeah, but no, this sounds good.
More friends, yeah.
I mean, of course I have friends. Sorry, but no, that sounds great. No, it's honestly, it sounds, those kinds of lessons sound really massive, and it's great to see that you've kind of taken those lessons and you kind of applied those lessons to your path. 100%. I think it sounds super interesting, and it's. What I actually was about to ask, actually, was like, when was the last time you said, I don't know about something? That I'm really curious about.
Probably, it's really funny, actually. I say it so much now. Joe and I were on the phone this morning. We were like, we just don't know what we're doing. We just don't know what's going on. We were talking about admin, right? We were talking about institutional stuff, because obviously Yet Again is growing, and we were discussing a lot of the administrative stuff that we need to get done. And Joe and I were just saying, there is so, we're talking to one of our really good friends who's helping us on the admin. And we were just like amazed, because I was like, this guy knows so much. I love how knowledgeable he is. I love how much experience he has. And me and Joe were just saying, we don't know enough about the institutionalization of organizations, about admin. We know a very on the surface level thing, because I'm 23, I'm still learning, and so is Joe. So I remember us saying today, like we were saying to our friend, we don't know how to do something, we don't understand how this works, let's learn from you. Can you teach us? Can you help us? Can you support us? And that's really beneficial, because I mean, there will always be somebody who's better at something than you, and that's great, because you can learn from them, and then you can become better at that area. And I think that, especially in this area of activism, we work with campaigners who are so senior and so experienced that it's just phenomenal learning from them. And a lot of the time, we all bring something different to the table, and we say, we don't know about this. Can you teach us? Can you show us? And I've learned so much just by saying that. So it's been amazing. And I definitely think if you want to learn more, just say to somebody, I don't know how this works. I don't know what this is. And they'll show you, and they'll teach you. Yeah,
definitely. And have you, because you've spoken a little bit about, adult campaigners in terms of human rights, have you ever felt intimidated at all once you're doing your work at all, or not really?
Yes, I have felt intimidated. The first time I felt intimidated was probably fully intimidated was this year. So when I started in activism on the Uyghur issue, I remember on the Uyghur genocide and Uyghur persecution, that I started this about 3 years ago by myself. So there, I was making connections with people, and I was making connections with lead researchers, academics, organizations. And because I did that on my own back, I didn't I didn't, I knew other people existed, but I didn't know how big that scope was. So I didn't really have too much, I guess, to feel intimidated by, because I wasn't exposed to so much, right? I was just focusing on what I was doing. And then this year, we branched out so much, and we work with such incredible people. And I remember being on a call, somebody invited me on a call, and there were really amazing people on there. And I was just like, why am I invited to this? Like, why am I here? Like, should I be here? And I felt intimidated, not in the obvious sense of there was one specific person I was intimidated by. I was more intimidated by the situation, because I was like, this is crazy. No one really has said to me, or they have said, but I don't think much about it. They've, Jaya, you're really good at this aspect of the campaign you're organizing, or this is really good, or whatever. And all of a sudden, someone else started to see me that way, and this person's super experienced, and I was just like to her, this is crazy. Like, I felt intimidated by the concept of it, because I don't see past that. And then, that's when I realized that actually we all do have something to offer and something to bring. I'm 23. The person I was talking to was in her early 30s, but we have so much that's in common, and we just have to be able to bring it. So I think it's so easy to feel intimidated. What has helped me is just realizing that we all have something that we bring to the table, and we will always have to learn. And so, we're all working on a common goal. Let's do that together, and realize that in activism there is no room for egos. We're not here to I'm really fortunate I don't work with people who have big egos, or who are I'm better than everybody because I do XYZ. They're just giving, selfless, kind people, and I know that's not the reality for a lot of people, and so I'm very grateful for that, because I do think activism, especially nowadays with social media, can become quite egotistical or superficial. And so it's really important to get aligned into what you need to aim on. What's your intention? What are we aiming for? And I'm really lucky that I have people like that around me.
That's really cool. And the thing of what I think stands out from talking to you is you're quite humble, and you can at least admit that you don't know about something, or you can at least admit, I'm a little bit intimidated. However, you can take back and actually realize what you can offer, which I think is quite a humbling experience, which I think is really good.
It is 100%. I joke around all the time. Like, sometimes I'm just like to people, I'm just like I'll joke around the things I don't know, and I'll joke about the things, that I do know. And I think you've just got, I like to think that I am genuine with people, because I think the most important thing has to be relationship building. And that's not just in activism, but it's incredibly important in activism. I have to build trust. I have to build confidence in myself and in the people that I'm working with, because we deal with such crazy situations, right? So I think that's super important to remember. And I'm really, really lucky in that, I think being genuine, being yourself, just being who you are is super important. And we have to empower ourselves to feel more confident in our own skin.
Absolutely. And just to kind of like leave this interview off, I think it's been really, really great just to understand a lot of what you feel and how you are as a person. I think it's been super insightful. Would you say, is there any perceptions of you that you feel is very incorrect of you? Would you say, like, because you're very humble, do you feel like that value isn't being expressed enough? Or are there any other values that you feel like you express within yourself that doesn't get mentioned that much, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So think about the humble stuff. I think that, one does not, I feel like I've never been one that really needs affirmation. I've never thought I need affirmation from people. And I think that's just because I'm so harsh on myself that even if someone does say something nice to me, I'm often like, well, I could work on this, I could work on that.
Like imposter syndrome, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But I do think affirmation is important when you're building relationships. And I'm really grateful that I work with people who will say when something's going well, and they will thank you and they'll be grateful for it, but they'll also say where things could be improved, and we're all really honest with each other. So I think that's okay. I think in terms of other perceptions about myself, I think generally I think I come across, I'm very diplomatic, so I'm often if and I've been like this since a young age. So like if anybody's having a fight, I'll often try and be in the middle, and I'll try and like level it off and try and and make sure everyone's okay. And I think being diplomatic is a really important skill, but I've definitely experienced where some people take me being diplomatic for me being for me not being firm. not being, assured about something. But I am, I can get quite firm about certain issues. So, if I feel like something is completely wrong and someone's not treated right or something like that, I will be quite honest about it and I'll be quite open. But I feel like sometimes people don't expect that because they think I'm just a pacifier or I'm just going to, and unless you sort of know me on a day-to-day basis, I think I do come across as quite chill and quite diplomatic. But I've got a lot going on in my head, and I often do think that there is a time to be, straightforward and direct. There's also a time to be diplomatic. And I think it's about having a balance. And I don't think people always see that balance, because I sometimes find it hard, to be a bit firmer. I think people always see me as super sweet and super innocent. And I think you can be sweet and you can be kind, but you can also be, stand firm in what you believe in, or if you feel like something's wrong. I think it's interesting because when people see me be firm, sometimes they're like, whoa, and I'm like, you've got to do it sometimes.
Yeah. No, it's true. I agree with that a lot. It's really difficult to try and strike the balance because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but you also want to stand your ground and stay true to your morals and all values even. So it's hard.
And it's part of being a leader, right? Like, when you're leading something, you've got to have the ability to be diplomatic and to be respectful and to be to make people feel comfortable, but also to lead, right? You have to take charge on certain things. And that's where coming across as a bit firmer is really important. And I think that having a good balance is important as well, because sometimes you do need people who can just bring things back to where you're meant to focus on. And I guess, in terms of other perceptions of me, I don't really know, to be honest. I don't know what people's perceptions are of me. I think what you see is what you get with me generally. So I've always been like that. And I think part of that reason is that, I think I'm quite honest and I'm quite a candid person, in the sense that, my relationships are based on who I am. And I think that that's really important. And so, generally, when people talk about perceptions of me, they're generally correct if they know me well. But I think we always find out more about people, which is the fun part about all these relationships.
Totally. And even more funnier to have this conversation, even just to understand you a little bit more from that.
Great. No one ever asked me these questions, so I love it.
No, that's good.
I'm very open about it. I'll talk about it with people that I work with and people that are my friends. But if I'm doing a panel discussion on the Uyghurs, this obviously is not going to come up. So it's cool. Definitely. It's great questions, and I think it's important to realize and to be candid and honest, because people can say I relate to that or I can learn something from it. And I try when I can to be honest with people and to be honest about my experiences as well.
On that note, I think that's a really good way to end this kind of interview. I just want to say, Jaya, thank you so much for coming on to In Colour. This is just the part where you can plug in your socials and find our listeners and all our audience can find you. So where can our audience find Jaya online?
Yep, so I'm very active on Twitter, which is great for activism. It's great for news and keeping up to instant updates. So my username is Jaya Pathak _ on Twitter, and my organisation Yet Again is at Yet Again UK on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's yetagainuk as well.com. So that's our website. I also have Instagram. I have a public Instagram that I use to support my activism. It's at Pathak's Posts. So it's my surname with an S and then posts. I'm not as active on that, but I do try and do work on there. But I'm mostly active on Twitter. So, Twitter's fast, it's instant, and it's a great place to talk about these issues that really matter. So that's generally it, really. Otherwise, join us at Yet Again and contact us and get in touch and join us if you want to help us in our work as well.
Perfect. So hope all the listeners enjoyed that interview with Jaya, and hope everyone has an amazing day. And until the next episode of In Colour, stay in colour.